Appeals for case number 2020-01. My name is Doris Spencer, and I am the chair of the Chesapeake Beach Board of Appeals. Tonight's hearing is being conducted virtually. Each member of the board is participating remotely. The hearing is being live streamed and will be published on YouTube. For those persons logged on to this meeting or on the call, you'll have an opportunity to speak, ask questions, and comment for the record. At the appropriate time, I will ask for your comments. So let me take a roll call of the members and call this hearing to order. Mr. David Ferguson, are you here?
I'm here.
Ms. Kelly Stewart, are you here? Mr. Jody Homestar, are you here?
Here.
Ms. Jane Rutke, are you here?
Yes, I am.
And I would like to welcome you, Jane, as a new member
Thank you, Doris.
to the Board of Appeals. Okay, let it be recorded that we have a quorum. Also with us, Sharon Hume, who is the town clerk and secretary to the Board of Appeals, Frederick Sussman, who is the attorney for the Board of Appeals, and Christopher Jacober, which is the town planner and zoning administrator. The purpose of this hearing is to consider two requests from the Calvert County Board of Education. The Board of Education is proposing to develop 7900 Old Bayside Road in order to replace Beach Elementary School with a new school building. The first request is for a special exception in order to use the property of 7900 Old Bayside Road for a public school. The second request is a variance. The applicant would like to modify the zoning ordinance's maximum height limit so that the new school building can exceed the limit of 35 feet. We will hear the special exception case first. Only after we've heard all the evidence on the special exception and any public comment will we take up the variance case. Once we've heard all the testimony on the variance, including public comments, we will close the hearing and move into deliberations. It is my intention that we decide both matters this evening. Before we begin testimony, I'd like to ask Mr. Sussman to swear in everyone who intends to offer comments and testify at this evening's hearing on either the special exception and or the variance. So if you wish to speak to the board this evening on these matters, please prepare now to be sworn in.
So if anybody who would like to or intends to speak to the board tonight would raise your right hand, I will administer the oath. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you are about to give and the responses and statements you are about to make will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth? And signify by saying, I do.
I do.
Let the record reflect that many people have indicated they intend to testify and have taken the oath. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, now I'd like to ask the board secretary Sharon Hume to confirm that this meeting was properly notified and advertised as required by town code.
Yes, the property was posted on July 27th in 3 areas on the property, advertised in the Southern Maryland newspaper beginning on the July 24th edition and then ran for 3 weeks thereafter. The adjacent property owners were notified by certified mail by letter dated July 31st.
Okay, good. These documents will now be recorded as exhibits. Now let's begin with the application. Before I turn to the town planner for a summary, I'd like Mr. Sussman to take a moment to explain what special exceptions and variances are and what criteria we will use to make our decisions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, we have what's known as a special exception. A special exception is a use that the town council has determined is appropriate and compatible in a particular zoning district as long as certain criteria are satisfied. In deciding to approve or deny a special exception, the board applies standards that are set forth in section 290-12D of the zoning ordinance. Each standard must be satisfied and the applicant has the burden of proof. There are 6 standards which I will read to you now. Number 1, the establishment, maintenance, and operation of the special exception will not be detrimental to or endanger the public health, safety, or general welfare. Number 2, the special exception shall be such that it will be harmonious in character as well as appropriate in appearance with and will not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of other property in the neighborhood for the purposes already permitted, nor
Wait a minute, I didn't get that. They canceled mine. What was that? I thought it was Birdie. I know, but I thought it was coming out of Birdie's throat.
Can somebody mute themselves, please?
Okay.
So as I was saying, the use will not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of other property in the neighborhood for the purposes already permitted, nor substantially diminish and impair property values within the neighborhood. 3, the establishment of the special exception will not impede the normal and orderly development and improvement of surrounding properties for the uses permitted in the zoning district. Number 4, the establishment and operation of the special exception will not adversely impact the capacity and or safety of the town infrastructure, such as roads, water and sewer, drainage, and things of that nature. 5, the special exception shall be such that pedestrian and vehicular traffic associated with such use will not be hazardous to or unduly conflict with the existing and anticipated traffic in the neighborhood. And finally, number 6, the establishment, maintenance, and operation of the special exception are consistent with the town of Chesapeake Beach comprehensive plan. So those are the 6 criteria that the board has to consider and make positive findings on in order to grant a special exception. Now let me turn for a moment to a variance. A variance is a modification to the strict application of the dimensional standards of the zoning ordinance. There are times when an applicant faces significant limitations in the ability to develop land because of the lay of the land or some other physical condition of these lands, such as shape or topography. and cannot meet the dimensional standard or finds that trying to meet the standard, he or she would experience a hardship. The zoning ordinance provides or allows for the standard to be modified or varied. But in order for the board to approve a variance, an applicant must prove and the board must find that certain standards are met. For a variance, there are 5 standards that must be met. First, that the granting of the variance will be in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the zoning ordinance and shall not be injurious to the neighborhood or otherwise detrimental to the public welfare. Number 2, that the granting of the variance will not permit the existence within the zoning district of any use which is not permitted in that district. Number 3, that there are special circumstances or conditions fully described in the board findings applying to the land or buildings for which the variance is sought, which circumstances or conditions are peculiar to the land or buildings and do not apply generally to land or buildings in the neighborhood, and that the circumstances or conditions are such that the strict interpretation of the provisions of the zoning chapter would deprive the applicant of the reasonable use of the land or building. Number 4, that there exists unnecessary hardship if the hardship is general, that is shared generally by land or buildings in the neighborhood, relief should be properly obtained only by legislative action by the town council or by court review of the attack on the validity of the zoning ordinance. And finally, number 5, and again, I would ask somebody who has their mic on to please mute, that the granting of the variance is necessary for the reasonable use of the land or building, and that the variance, as granted by the board, is the minimum variance that will accomplish the purpose. So those 5 standards must be found by the board in order to grant the variance. Thank you.
We're going to take up the special exception first. So in a moment, I will ask Mr. Jakubiak to summarize the special exception request. After we've had an opportunity to ask Chris questions, I will ask the applicant to introduce those members who will be offering testimony and to present the case on the special exception. I want to repeat that I would like to hear the case for the special exception first. Once we've heard the applicant's case for the special exception, we will hear from anyone who may wish to testify on behalf of or in opposition to the special exception. Then I will close the testimony on the special exception and we'll start again, but this time with the variance. After we finish the presentation of evidence and the public comment on the variance, we will formally begin our deliberations and decide each matter. If there is no objection from the board, I'd like to ask the town planner staff be entered into the record as an exhibit. Okay, Mr. Jakubiak, please summarize the special exception application.
Okay, thank you. First, I'd like to ask Holly, who I believe is hosting tonight's meeting, if she could share the screen, allow me to share the screen so I can place an exhibit on your monitors.
Sure, you should be able to share.
Well, right now it says host disabled attendee screen sharing.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Can everyone see the aerial photograph showing the school and the neighborhood?
Yes.
Yes, indeed.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Yes.
Well, especially the members. Thank you. The application for a special exception is required under the zoning ordinance to redevelop this property. It's currently the home, as you know, to Beach Elementary School, which is about 65,000 square feet of building coverage. It's located at the intersection of Bayside Road and Bayside Road at 7900 Bayside. And I wanted to point out a couple of features that are relevant to tonight's discussion. First, the front of the school property along Bayside Road is largely devoted to recreational activities. There's tennis courts, and there's a small park and a little grove of trees. It's generally recognized as an open space amenity for the town. I wanted to mention that there is a sidewalk along Bayside Road. It's a 5-foot sidewalk. It exists today, has been there for many, many years. There is no sidewalk on the east side of Bayside Road, and there is no sidewalk south of Old Bayside Road. There is no sidewalk on Old Bayside Road either. Those are existing conditions. I also wanted to point out that the site is 17 acres in size, but a major part of the site is simply undevelopable, or it couldn't be developed without substantial impact to the environment. This forested area is part of the property. There are steep slopes here, and there are wetlands. Here's the marsh that characterizes the town, and you can see the railway trail just north of the site over the marsh. Here's E Street, which is almost at just beyond the edge of the property, and here's the water tower site, which stands at about 135 foot tall, and will always remain a prominent feature in the landscape on the side of the town. So I mentioned the sidewalks only to indicate to you that they're not very adequate just yet, but the project itself is going to make a major contribution to improving the situation. The school will be providing a sidewalk connection from Bayside Road all the way through the frontage of the property. And I know that the applicant will make an extraordinary presentation like he did in front of the Planning Commission a couple weeks back. And he will show you where that sidewalk and how it works to separate kids from buses and kids from vehicle traffic. You might also wonder about how kids from south of enter the school site. For the time being, there is no sidewalk here, but there is a sidewalk proposed as part of the Safe Routes to School project, which is a state funding program in cooperation with towns to develop sidewalks. It's certainly our hope, when I say that, I mean me as staff and the Planning Commission that is looking at improving walkability in Chesapeake Beach. It is our hope that sidewalks will eventually be built that will connect the neighborhood to the school. The Planning Commission thinks it's important at least have the ability to walk to school. So that's a part of this project that I think the applicants have gone a long way to helping us realize. And you'll see that in a few moments. there are a number of standards, as Mr. Sussman mentioned, that have to be met. And it's up to the applicant to prove to you that each of those standards are met. But I would like you to keep in mind that this site has been a school site since 1953. And over time, it has evolved and expanded and morphed into its current configuration. There have been a number of additions to it over time. The current capacity of the school is about 471 students, and over time that the actual enrollment has exceeded capacity. And I'm not aware of there being any significant impacts of that school site on adjoining properties or in health or safety or public welfare, these things that our standards ask us to look at. The proposed school will have a capacity of 474, or actually I can't remember right now. I'll have to look to verify that. But it's going to be roughly 100 students more. I'm looking through the staff report.
It's 514.
578.
578. Thank you. Thank you. So I wanted to mention that. However, the school building itself, in terms of its footprint on the landscape, is going to be about 10,000 square feet smaller. And in part, that's a reflection of the fact that it's difficult to build a new school on a site that's constrained environmentally and keep the students in school while you're doing it. So the proposal will be to maintain the existing buildings or building while the new school is being built. And it's a fact that there's not much room on this site to build a school that is your traditional suburban sprawling school. And in response to those conditions, the architecture and engineering team took a pretty innovative approach to address site conditions and to minimize the impact of the new building on the town, on streets, on the neighborhood. And standards that have to be met. So regarding standard 1, I just want to take a quick summary, and I know the applicant will present this information too, but in many ways I'm endorsing what they will say. The use will not be detrimental to or endanger the public health or safety. Regarding standard 1, as I mentioned, the school has existed since 1953, and ingress and egress have not appeared to create any safety concerns. The current proposal that you'll see tonight addresses a lot of access issues and seeks to separate pedestrians from vehicles. Regarding standard 2, the special exception will be harmonious in character as well as appropriate in appearance, and will not injure the enjoyment of property in the neighborhood. I wanted to mention that the illustrations that you have in your package are designed to indicate that the building will use materials and architectural styles and motifs with local precedent. They're drawn from Chesapeake Beach in the existing built environment. And the applicant, I'm fairly certain, will take time to demonstrate how their proposed building, while it will be taller in places than the current building, has been designed to fit compatibly within this residential neighborhood. Regarding standard 3, the establishment of the special exception would not impede the normal and orderly development of surrounding properties. As you know, the area is largely developed now. There are houses on Old Bayside Road and there are houses on 15th Street. They exist today, and the school has existed there in a harmonious way, more or less, for many decades. And we don't anticipate that changing with just a change in the configuration of the building and the site. Regarding standard 4, the establishment and operation of the special exception will not adversely impact the capacity and safety of the town infrastructure, roads, water, sewer, and drainage. The water and sewer systems are more than adequate to serve the school. In fact, while my belief is, having looked at this, is that the actual usage of water and sewage may be, at least the water demand, will be maybe less than the current school, because all the fixtures will be modern and energy or water conservation fixtures. The impact to aerial roads will be not be materially different than the current usage. Buses will have a special one-way route from and to Old Bayside Road for drop-off and pickup. There won't be buses lined up on Old Bayside Road. There's also going to be a fairly extensive sidewalk network along the perimeter of the property. Number 5, the special exception will be such that pedestrian and vehicle traffic will not be hazardous to or unduly conflict with the existing and anticipated traffic in the neighborhood. The only reservation I have about this, and this is something that I will certainly take up with the engineer, is that the current sidewalk ends, the sidewalk that's proposed by the applicant ends about 130 feet or so short of an intersection. So it kind of stops mid-block just before it gets to E Street. And because of that, that's an issue. And we would like to coordinate with the school to ensure that that connection gets built in a reasonable time. And that's something that I'd like to coordinate between our town engineer and the applicant's engineer, so that we're all on the same wavelength and we're all marching in the same direction about getting that sidewalk accomplished in a reasonable time. That sidewalk all the way to E Street is actually part of the Safe Routes to School plan that we're working with the State Highway Administration on. And the last standard is about the comprehensive plan. The established maintenance and operation of the special exception are consistent with the comprehensive plan of Chesapeake Beach. Well, the plan calls for a school at this site, obviously, and it hasn't departed from that through a number of iterations of the comprehensive plan. Also shows sidewalks being connected to it. It shows a park and recreational resource being made out of the school so that the school continues to be a park. We have a map in the comprehensive plan that shows P for park right on the school property. And I'm happy to say that the school is actually showing that very thing. And in that respect, it's retained that character that the current school has, the tennis courts up in the front, park and open space. And in fact, from my standpoint as a urban planner, I see that the school has actually improved upon that part of the town's character by actually expanding the accessibility of that open space and building upon it. And I'm certain that the applicant will discuss that today. The one part that the school is, I still needs to address, and as indicated to me and to the Planning Commission, its willingness to address, is connecting the school property to the rails or to the Fishing Creek Trail project. And that's something of vital importance to the comprehensive plan of the town. And I'm very confident that we'll take that issue up when this matter goes back to the Planning Commission. But I wanted to highlight that to you. And if you have any questions about the applicant on that specific point, that can certainly be a discussion tonight. Although it does not need to be, because I feel the applicant has indicated a clear willingness to close the window on that issue and work with us to at least identify where that alignment might be in the future, or best could be, to connect the school property to the town's Fishing Creek Railway Trail. So in summary, on the special exception, oops. Sorry, trying to get there. On the special exception request, the applicant proposes to completely redevelop this property. The building mass that is located here now in the front will largely be shifted to this area where I'm circling here. And much of this area will be devoted to open space and recreational amenities. The impact to the natural environment will be substantially minimized. There's very little incursion into the critical area buffer or wetlands. And to the extent there is any incursion into the wetlands, the town has already found that those incursions, which are quite minimal actually, amounting to about 10 to 13,000 square feet, are necessary for the project. They actually repair a stormwater management outfall, which will improve the environmental condition. And these incursions or cutouts of the natural area are actually consistent with the plan, because any tree that is removed will be replaced within the buffer. Any shrubs or natural vegetation will be replaced essentially in the same location where they're removed, but certainly within the official critical area buffer. And we've been in contact with the Critical Area Commission now already, and we've gotten guidance from them, and I feel confident that the final plan will implement the critical area regulations just fine. So that's my summary, Dr. Spencer.
If there's no objection from the board, I'd like the town planner's staff report entered into the record as an exhibit. Okay, Mr. Jakubiec, please summarize the special exception.
Oh, well, I know I did well, just to summarize, I believe the applicant has met the criteria for the special exception. And while my presentation is simply focused on an existing map, I wanted to save the actual plan documents for the applicant to present, which I'm certain he's ready to do.
Okay, are there any questions from the board?
None here.
None here as well.
Nope.
Okay. Let's hear from the applicant on this matter.
There, if I may share my screen, this is Ron Ilkovich, SEI Architects representing Calvert County Public Schools. I'm getting a message that the host has disabled attendee screen sharing. All right. Please let me know when you see my screen. If someone could let me know, that'd be great.
We see it.
Awesome, great. If it's all right, I'd like to make a presentation of the project in its entirety and then break down the special exception first and the variance. But just to keep the presentation consistent, I'll run through the entire project and explain it all, because I think there are pieces of the project and the presentation that address both the special exception and a variance, if that's okay. As was outlined ahead of time, Chris, you did a great job. We're here to present our preliminary plan for the replacement of the Beach Elementary School on its current site, which includes the school as well as site improvements around the school and associated with the school. And we're here to request that special exception to allow us to redevelop the site in its current existing use as a elementary school in the medium density residential zone. And after that, we're here to also request a variance to exceed that 35-foot height limitation. Before I begin, I want to share a little bit about the process that we went through to get here. You can see that there are many attendees to this meeting. and many of those represent what we call our stakeholder advisory group. The process that we took to get here was extremely collaborative. It included both a feasibility study as well as a schematic design process. And a lot of those members of that stakeholder group, many of whom again are on the call today, are dedicated community members, school administrators, teachers, parents, people who grew up in the community, all of whom participated in the process. And I want to really emphasize that the results of that process that you're going to see before you today are really results of the impact and the input that those people brought to that commitment that they made to be part of that stakeholder advisory group. So I can't thank everybody enough for their involvement in this project. Another influence in the project and a stakeholder group is the town of Chesapeake Beach. We took very much into consideration the 2040 vision plan, and that was a guide to our stakeholder group. And we found amongst the stakeholder group that many of the goals and the ideals of that 2040 vision were the same goals and ideals that we had for our project. The idea of how we fit into the town plan, the scale of the town, the environmental impact, and the importance of the bay and the environment and the local ecology that had to both the town as well as to the school committee. So before you have our kind of an analysis of the existing condition. On the bottom right corner, sorry, I'll start at the top right. This is one of the most special school sites I think we've ever had the great opportunity to work on. You can see from the project site, we're within a quarter mile, so a 5-minute walk of the waterfront of the Chesapeake Bay, as well as the Fishing Creek site. Within a half-mile walk, a 10-minute walk, we cross the bridge into downtown Chesapeake Beach. So the idea of the semi-urban environment, the local ecology, those are all pieces that make Chesapeake Beach Elementary School what it is, and something that we really want to celebrate in our project. Also was mentioned the idea of the interconnectivity of the town, and this is a major emphasis of that 2040 vision as well. So whether it be through pedestrian pathways or bicycle pathways, you can see how that project site of the Chesapeake Beach Elementary School is really integral to that interconnection of that town in a different way other than just driving to everywhere that you go. As we move into the site, we see some of the impacts that the existing conditions give us. And although the site is 17 acres in size, as Chris mentioned, a lot of that is steep topography. We have wetlands buffers as well as forest buffers for that forested area behind the school. We also have the existing zoning setbacks, which we are respecting with the project. Environmental buffer offset setbacks, as well as the existing building. And the existing building will remain in place while we are under construction, remain in operation while we're under construction. And one thing I may point out here is that existing building has a large number of portables and outbuildings associated with it, which really demonstrates the need for this project. Eliminating all those portable classrooms and bringing those children into a proper elementary school environment is really important to all of us as community members. All of those things together really give us a very limited building area. And you can see that identified within this bubble on the diagram before you. And for that reason, we're looking for that special exception and also sharing that as the constraints of the site and the hardships that the site offer to this project. Sorry. I mentioned the idea of the existing school building remaining in place. As a result, we're limited to that building area to the west of the existing school building, and we'll be implementing this project in such a way that it can be built on the site while the existing building is still in operation. And you can see a phasing diagram here in which the existing building would be constructed. Once it can be constructed and occupied, once the new building is constructed and occupied, the existing building and portables can be demolished and removed, and the remainder of the site in the final phase be completed, intended for school year of 2023. Moving into the site itself, I want to share a little bit about what our process looked like. Knowing where the building really had to go, the only buildable area of the site, we started with this diagram on the top left. It took the idea of how does the site now relate to the building, and how does the site also relate to the town in that town master plan. And with the building in this location, we identified areas of program in the building that would relate directly to program in the site. And in doing so, we developed a series of these 5 zones across the site of the building. There's obviously the building area, and that's the school building zone. To the west of the school building zone is the service and play areas for the school, kind of a private, more private, controlled play area for the school. And that relates directly to the gym and the cafeteria zone that would be in the school. And being this far back on the site, it's also the ideal place for service to the building. On the front of the site, it would relate to the entry sequence, the secure entry, gathering places, outdoor learning areas in the front of the site. From a town standpoint and town planning standpoint, what we wanted to avoid was the idea of building a huge parking lot with a school behind it and presenting that kind of image. And Chris spoke very eloquently about the idea where the school, we really wanted to envision it or give it the image of a park and a school within a park. And for that reason, we put the transit zone, so the parking, the drop-off area, and the bus loop behind what we're calling a public green. So the face of the school from Bayside Road would be this public green, and then the school would occur behind that public green. We then went into the implementation of that idea, how we would zone the building out with the program of the school, the playgrounds, the play areas, the play fields, and the existing tennis court, to end up with the design that you see on the top right of your screen here. And I'll just explain the design from east to west. From Old Bayside Road, we intend to provide a park-like setting. Again, the existing tennis courts will remain. The project is designed such that a lot of the significant trees in this front area, those large trees, will also remain once our project is complete. And behind that, a play field and a natural trail, kind of a green front to the building, so a parkland motif. Once we get beyond that into what we're calling the transit zone, the parking lot and the bus loop really exists in an area where it's not the first thing, the most prominent thing that you would experience from Bayside Road. Likewise, on Old Bayside Road, we want to develop a green buffer zone, buffering the building and any hard surfaces from Old Bayside Road, and create kind of this meandering pathway, which is our sidewalk system connecting the two corners of our site here. Moving back to the building, the media center, the administration, all relate to outdoor learning environments. And I want to point out that by putting the administration proud on the southeast corner of the building, it provides us an ideal security posture. This is a little bit higher on the site. And from this position, it can surveil the entire front of the site, as well as anybody coming from Old Bayside Road. So anyone who comes to the building, they'll see you coming before you get to the front door. That surveillance is a very important component of the school security system. And then on the back of the site is all our kids' play areas, the school's play field related to the gym, the outdoor playground areas related to the cafeteria on that west site. Circulation through the site was also a critical component, particularly for safety reasons in our design process. You'll notice that with the sidewalk system coming in all three major corners of the building, a pedestrian student can walk to the front door without ever crossing any piece of traffic. So whether you're coming in to park or you're coming in to drop a child off, or if the bus is coming to drop kids off, once you get on that site, you're able to access the front of the school and that front door without ever crossing traffic, which is a significant safety item that we tried to incorporate into the design of the school. Likewise, the circulation is also intended to segregate vehicle traffic, parent drop-off, and the bus loop circulation patterns in their entirety. So right now, those patterns overlap. So parents drop off with school buses, and they all interface with one another. The idea now is that any parent dropping off student will do so essentially where they come into the parking lot now, only we've developed a very long neck for those parents to stack along, and they would drive down this lane and drop off directly on the sidewalk. Again, the intent here is multiple. One is any student who is dropped off or picked up by a parent does so directly from a sidewalk and never crosses traffic to get to that safety point. The other is safety of the vehicles on Bayside Road. Creating this long neck means that no one is stopped on Bayside Road waiting to enter the site and potentially be an issue for a car cresting the hill, coming downhill southbound on Bayside Road. Getting that traffic off of Bayside Road is a safety measure that we're hoping to implement for the safety of Bayside Road. Also keeping buses off of Bayside Road and having them enter the site as they currently do on Old Bayside Road helps the movement of traffic on Bayside Road northbound and southbound. The bus loop will be reconfigured on the site, kind of in its current location, but now a little bit deeper into the site so that we can get appropriate turning radii, I apologize, and we can now park 8 buses nose to tail along the sidewalk directly. So kids getting off the bus, again, will never cross traffic between the bus and walking to the front of the school. Significant safety measure in the safe access to the school site. Looking at that diagram and where we're really stuck into the site and where the building really has to be, really led to that difficulty of fitting all of our program in the footprint permitted. And that's why we will be asking later this evening for that variance to exceed the 35 feet. But it also offered us some opportunities, which I'll share with you. One was, as we surveyed the existing building and we got up on the roof, we recognized that from a higher vantage point, we could actually see the bay, particularly in the winter when the leaves of the trees are down. And likewise, we could see into the ecology to the north, down towards Fishing Creek. And we think from a pedagogical standpoint for the school, the way it's so connected to its local environment and ecosystem, this is a great advantage that Beach Elementary School will have that no other elementary school could even dream of. So really reinforcing the opportunity to take advantage of those natural resources as a learning opportunity for our school was very great opportunity that our stakeholder advisory group wanted to take advantage of. The other neat thing that came through that process was the lighthouse inspiration and the motif of the lighthouse, and that this school could kind of be that beacon on the hill once it's finally built in the design. Likewise, if anyone of you have walked this site, you know that it continues to climb in elevation as you get from east to west on the site. We start at 62 feet above sea level and end up 72 feet above sea level, just over the small distance of our school. And as a result, our school will be designed to kind of step up with the site. That's important also from a massing standpoint in that we're always trying to keep the building as down and low in the site as possible, not to overwhelm the adjacent community. And I'll show you a little bit more about that later in our presentation. I know it's not germane to the 5 and 6 topics of the special exception and variances, but I just want to share with you some of our goals and some of what we're trying to accomplish. And what the true goal is to address the learning needs of those 570 students at Beach Elementary School, not just for today, but for tomorrow. So we really talked a lot about what we call 21st century learning and next generation learning. And these are learning theories in which we really try to address the learning needs of every student. So when I went to school, there was a teacher in the front of the room with a chalkboard, and that teacher spoke to 35 students, all of whom had to pay attention, sit up straight and watch that teacher. We've learned over the years that students don't really learn best in that atmosphere. Some children learn best by themselves. Some students learn best when they're moving around. Some students learn best when they're doing projects. Some learn in small groups and some learn individually, and some learn well in a large group of 20-some students. So for that, the diagrams that you see before you, which are the basis and the theory of the school, are really such that the classrooms relate to collaboration spaces where other activities can occur. And the collaboration spaces in turn relate to small group learning areas like resource rooms, where students who need a acoustically separated space or a quiet space to learn do best in a smaller environment than a full-size classroom. So really the intent here is to take care of the needs of all Chesapeake Beach students today and into the future, regardless of their learning needs. But in addition, the great opportunity for those collaboration spaces and the classrooms to have those views, to have that connection to the ecology, to have that connection to the town was really a great advantage that we couldn't not take into accord into the design of our project. So with that, some of the challenges that our site offered us. Here we see a section north-south of our 3-story building and where it sits on our site. And a number of things I want to point out. Chris did discuss about the forestation as well as the steep topography that really pens us in to a very small developable area. So you can see that pretty dramatically on the right side here. On the west side, on the left side of the image, we see Old Bayside Road. And what I really want to point out is that as Old Bayside Road moves from east to west, you can see in the distance on this top right image, it rises pretty dramatically. In fact, it rises faster than our site and our building will. And you can see that from Old Bayside Road, in many cases, our building will be down below Old Bayside Road. So it will never sit prouder, the finished floor elevation, than Old Bayside Road, and not really overwhelm the scale of the site. So we're trying to keep that three-story building in the appropriate scale of the community. Likewise, some of the adjacent buildings, the residential buildings, do the same. So the visual impact of our building is significantly diminished, despite the height that we're requesting. In addition, I talked a little bit about the green buffer zone, and you can see where that exists between Old Bayside Road and the school itself. And that's that really lovely meandering walkway that takes you from the east edge of the site to the west edge of the site through the project. Of course, nothing can compete with the height of the water tower, which is at the highest point of the site. And you can see in scale and comparison of our building to that water tower here, but also very importantly in the graphic. We tried to put the building in scale on site three-dimensionally so that you can see how the water tower really does dominate the site. The other piece I want to bring up is that when you're on Old Bayside Road, if you see the line of the ridge of the adjacent houses across the street, because the building is set back further on the site and because the building is set down into the site as much as possible, it's not really competing with the height of the ridge in a three-dimensional viewpoint. So that was very important for us in our design to be good neighbors, particularly because many of our stakeholder group were community members and people who grew up here again. So images here are the aerial image of the school itself. These are the three houses directly across the street. They in fact sit higher than our property because those at the east end are above the topography of our site. And hopefully, if you recall the site plan, house 2, 3, and 4 will actually be looking out into that parkland in the front of the site. The other building adjacent neighbor that I want to point out is the Daycare Center, which is to the northeast corner of the site. And that's picture image 1 here on the top left. And it's an important image because I want to kind of reiterate how our idea was to put a parkland on Bayside Road with a school set further back. So two things happen in our relationship to that neighbor. One is they are significantly uphill from us. As a result, the ridgeline of that building is actually, from a three-dimensional standpoint, higher visibly than the ridgeline of our building, even at its higher height. Likewise, our building is set back, and this is a fine balance that we tried to play, where we're really trying to demonstrate that there's a beautiful new 21st century school on the site, but also to create that green buffer, which was so important in our discussions as that front area and the face that we placed to the community as we developed the site. And again, I talked about how on Old Bayside Road, we have the same idea with the green buffer zone against the existing building, as well as the way that the road rises a little bit faster than the site rises, and our building doesn't sit that much higher than the road in that elevation. We hope to provide additional amenities in addition to the green zone in the park as well. And Chris mentioned some of the trailhead ideas and how we want to integrate Fishing Creek Trail. And we talked about that at the Planning Commission hearing. And since then, we've been able to take an opportunity. So there's some new information on this slide in front of you to start to explore how we might make those connections. So I'm sharing that for the first time here. But I'll talk about the circulation on site in particular. I talked already about the parent drop-off and the parking loop and how that is brought off of Bayside Road to protect it. I talked about the bus loop, which will now go from 3 ingresses and egresses to only 2. So we're going to take one of those throats away. We're going to create appropriate turning radii and visibility for the bus loop. But on here also is a diagram showing three levels of pedestrian circulation on the site. One is the most formal, which is a series of 10-foot wide sidewalks, which take you directly in very straight lines from the bus or the parent drop-off directly to the front door. So that's a very clear formal distinction to make sure that those kids are able to move in and out of their circulation sequence appropriately. The second is a series of 5-foot sidewalks, which are a little bit more playful and meandering. And they're intended to connect to both the safe routes to school system, to be part of the bicycle circulation path that is ultimately envisioned for the plan of the town. And it's a little bit more meandering through the site to differentiate itself from that more formal walkway. And we also talk about a third level down of walkway pathways, which is more of a nature trail kind of pathway, identified in these dots here. And what's new in the diagram here is we started to envision how we might now connect our school to that Fishing Creek Trailway that will one day connect us all together. And we identified 2 different variants of that connection. One is we'd like to take advantage of that trailhead in our learning environment. So in this location, where it's directly adjacent to our front plaza and outdoor learning environment, we'd like to develop that trailhead as an outdoor classroom. And a classroom in which students can learn about stormwater management and how it affects the bay and how it affects their local ecology. Also, perhaps learn about what they're going to see as they walk down that trail and enjoy the experience and learn about their direct ecology and environment. So creating that outdoor classroom becomes part of our pedagogy as well as part of our trailhead connection. At the other end of our trail, we'd like to look at some sort of marker, whether it be a trail rules or something playful or a sensory trail or something that identifies that you are now entering that walkway down to Fishing Creek and what you might learn along the way as you take that walk. Whether you're part of our school or just a community member who's taking that walk and connecting the 2 pieces. So we're just now beginning to explore how we might connect that in a more friendly or pedestrian way. This school itself will also provide additional amenity to the town. In addition to being a great school environment, if you know the teachers and the principal and the folks who are so passionately involved in this school, you know the great service they already provide to their students. In addition, we want to provide a public function to the building itself as well. And the gym is being designed to be oversized to accommodate community use in the gymnasium. You can see in this top right diagram the size of the existing gym and the size of the new gym, which will be a full-size basketball court gym accommodated there. There will also be a community office and a community storage room to support any community functions that occur within that gym. And this public area of the building is designed such that it can be closed off from the existing school so that the school in the evening is completely secure from what will essentially function as a community center for evening and off-hour use. Another opportunity that the school has for community use is this cafeteria space, whether it's for homeowners association meetings, community presentations, or performances. It's designed in such a way that the stage addresses the cafeteria in this trapezoidal shape. It really works 2 ways. One, for a smaller audience in the trapezoid, it really provides ideal acoustics, ideal view lines for evening use or performances. But we're also planning to incorporate a folding partition, which will now open that up to the gymnasium, allowing for extremely much larger group activities. So whether it's a holiday concert or a rented out or borrowed out for public use for a performance or an event, we hope that this will become a great venue and community amenity, much beyond just the school's use of the facility. In balancing our project with the environment is a critical focal point of our project as well. Our project will be built to a LEED Silver standard when completed. And seen here are just some of the implementation that you'll see from the outside of the building of how we're starting to address those components. One is our solar orientation. Being east to west, we get ideal solar orientation. We have one broad south face and one broad north face, so we can control solar heat gain and lighting. But the other nice thing about identifying our building in this arrangement is that the shadow lines with our building facing east-west are all onto our site. A lot of times when a building is built, the shadow it casts on its neighbors can be an issue for impact to the neighbors. Being that our neighbors are mostly to the south of us, we really have no opportunity to cast a shadow on any of them. Also the stormwater management, which is the concept is currently in for how we're addressing that across the site is not only something that we can make a very beautiful amenity across the site, we also anticipate using it, as you see here in our bottom left image, as part of our learning environment, and really conveying the idea of environmental stewardship to our students, particularly when they get to see the result of that stewardship directly on their local environment, was a really strong discussion point among our stakeholder group. In the elevations, we also took significant measures to make sure that our project is consistent with the architecture and ideals of the region and the town, but also break the scale down of the building. Understanding that we're in a medium density residential zone, we take a number of architectural moves to break the massing of our building down. Majority of our building, the east side and the west side, will not be above the 35-foot minimum, but despite that, understanding that we're putting a school in a community, we took measures to break down the building by changing the facades and planes so that we get shadow lines and break down the massing. Change of materials to break down that massing as well. And we also implement a design strategy that we call local symmetry. So what that means is rather than designing a building where all the windows are equally spaced across the entire facade, that would make this entire facade feel like one big piece. By designing windows in groupings so that they're in smaller groupings that you identify as separate little pieces, that is what we refer to as a local symmetry and starts to break that facade down even further. So our idea is to really articulate the building to make the scale of the building consistent with the scale of the community it's in from a design standpoint. That then starts to migrate into the materiality of the building and how that building looks and addresses both the community as well as, present the appropriate front to people arriving at the school and understanding that this is a state-of-the-art 21st century learning environment. And I'll give you just a little insight on two different options that we're playing with right now in that materiality. One is what we call our landscape palette. It's one that looks to have our building meld into the landscape a little bit and not contrast with the landscape. So natural materials between the masonries and the woods and the metal roofing perhaps, or stone and wood palettes are really what we're trying to look at in the landscape palette. And likewise, we are looking at another palette that we're calling the Lighthouse Palette. And this is one that starts to employ the nautical vernacular that is so consistent throughout the downtown of Chesapeake Beach in our architectural as well, both in the massing and the shape of our building, but also in the materiality with the standing seams, the vertical lines through the building that connotate that vertical siding components. So a lot is going into developing our design in such a way that it is consistent with the architecture and the feel of the community. So with that, I'm going to end the formal presentation. Since we are looking at the special exception first, I'll conclude this part with just how we address the 6 requirements of the special exception. One is that we believe that as the applicant, that the project will not be detrimental or in danger to the public. Hopefully, I was able to convey how far we went to really articulate the safety on site and the safety and connections to the ultimate Safe Routes to School project. Our design is striving to be harmonious with the regional and town character, both in its massing, its materiality, and the way we're addressing the site of the town, the way we're addressing that green space to the town itself. We don't think will be an impedance to the development of adjacent properties. In fact, all the adjacent properties are already developed. We don't believe also, as Chris indicated, that we will have an adverse impact to local public facilities. In fact, I'm hoping that we will provide a public amenity to the community at large. And great effort was taken to evaluate the pedestrian and vehicle traffic, both in the immediate implementation and how we articulate that through our site, and of course to the ultimate goal in that 2040 vision. Once the Safe Routes to School project and the interconnected town is developed, we hope to just literally click in right to that plan when it's ultimately envisioned and seen through. So also having implemented the goals of the town's 2040 vision and the fact that this has always been a school and planned to be a school, we hope that you find that the project is consistent with that comprehensive plan as well. So in conclusion, those are the 6 criteria of the special exception, which we're happy to answer any questions and take any comments that you may have. Appreciate your time this evening.
Are there any questions from the board?
Lower A1C and lower risk of a fatal heart attack?
On it with Guardian.
Ask your doctor about Jardians.
Sarah's dog Blue.
I do have one question. This is Jody Hoonstar. I'm wondering about the word existing in your plans. Does something like existing tennis courts mean that it is going to be untouched by your project, or is that just a conceptual thing that the tennis courts will stay in the right place? Like, are you planning on making any modifications or changes there?
We're not, and I think that is maintained right now by Parks and Recs, not the school system. So our intention is to leave that in its current condition.
Thank you.
Mr. Jakubiec, do you have any questions of the applicant?
You're muted, Chris.
I'm sorry, and thank you, whoever said that. I appreciate that. Yes, I have one question, and I also have 2 things I'd like to mention. First is the applicant referred to the 2040 vision. What that is a vision statement that the Planning Commission has put together as part of the current comprehensive planning process. It reflects what the Planning Commission is as understood as the priorities of the town, and it's drafted in a way to encompass the results of a series of public meetings and a survey that the Planning Commission conducted. So it's not official yet because it hasn't been adopted. It would be adopted when the new comprehensive plan gets adopted. Of course, it may change, it may be refined over time, and it's a draft right now, but to date, it really does accurately reflect where the town citizens are thinking when they engage with the Planning Commission. And candidly, it's not a huge departure from the current comprehensive plan. So Rand is spot on, and it does appear that this project does really seek to reflect those elements in that vision. Second, the Planning Commission met on this project because the zoning ordinance says that the Board of Appeals refers special exceptions to the Planning Commission for a recommendation. And the Planning Commission did review this 2 weeks ago, and they did make a recommendation. And their recommendation was that the Board of Appeals approve this special exception. And I'll give you the recommendation on the variance later. The last thing I would just ask the applicant, and specifically Rand, could you, just for the record and for the board's benefit, explain who you are as an architect, what your degree is, and your professional qualifications, because I think it helps round out the discussion and adds a context for your testimony.
Certainly. So my name is Ron Ilkovich. I represent Calvert County Public Schools as my client. I'm an architect. My firm is Small and Emery Ilkovich Architects, and I'm principal and president of that firm. But really, and I appreciate you bringing that up, I represent not only the school system, but the stakeholder advisory group that really participated in this process, because it is a collaborative process. Certainly what I would dream up in my bubble is very different than what gets worked out together when we all collaborate. My personal CV, I'm local to the area. I grew up here in the state of Maryland, Montgomery County. I went to school at the University of Maryland for my undergrad, achieved my Bachelor's of Science last century, and my Master's of Architecture as well from the University of Maryland in 1998. I've been at this position and I've been in this firm for 24 years this month in my current firm, and I've been principal of the firm for 12 years. So those are my personal background story. I've been working with Calvert County Public Schools since 1996. My first project that I did with Calvert County Public Schools was Dowell Elementary School. And I've had the great pleasure to work with Calvert County Public Schools pretty consistently ever since then. And it's been just a great relationship and one that and has produced projects like Dowell Elementary School, like Calvert High School, like the Vocational Center that I consider cornerstones of my career and I'm extremely proud of. So I've long since appreciated working in Calvert County, and I also appreciate the seafood, to be quite honest.
No further questions from me.
Okay. Now we'll hear from the public. Sharon, has anyone signed up to speak on the?
No. No.
Okay, is there anyone on this call that would like to speak on this matter and ask questions of the applicant? If so, now's your time.
Yes, this is Mike Schisler, principal of the school. I just want to share, as Ron's alluded to several times, this has been a multi-year process getting to this point. And I want to say, I continue to be amazed at what Ron and his firm have done with the plans and with the ideas that they've collected from us. And they continue to improve on them. I mean, just tonight he shared again with you ideas that they took from the planning and zoning hearing that we had a few weeks ago and have incorporated them into the concept, especially the connection to the Fishing Creek Trail. And I just want to say for everyone's benefit, again, just for a point of transparency, when Mayor Wall got the trail, you know, the idea started with Bruce Wall and it took 10 years to get there. That we still have a ways to go. The school system can certainly work what's on its property and work on improving a trail. But the town or whomever is going to follow up with the trail is going to have to, you know, build another access across Fishing Creek. It's going to have to build a boardwalk through the marsh or around the marsh to connect with our school property. And so those are several steps that have to be done before we do make that connection. So once the school is finished in the summer of '23, doesn't mean that that trail connection is going to be finished, although it would be, you know, great that it's in the pipeline with other efforts from other groups and committees. So, but again, I want to thank Dr. Spencer and all your appeal board members tonight. And again, I just want to say that Ron and company have done a fantastic job, in our opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Schisler.
Okay, does the applicant have any cross-examination of any speaker?
No, ma'am.
If no, I'll close this part of the meeting, and now we will turn our attention to the variance. Let's start again with Mr. Jakubiec. Please summarize the matter before us.
Well, I will. I can be very brief now because I think there's been a nice presentation already of the building. But the applicant is requesting a 23-foot variance to the 35-foot maximum height standard in order to make the building 58 feet tall. So currently the zoning ordinance caps building height at 35 feet in the residential medium density zone. Buildings can exceed 35 feet. Well, the roofs can pop out over 35 feet, but essentially it's a 35-foot maximum height. The applicant is proposing a portion of the building to go 23 feet higher than that, so that the total maximum height will be 58 feet. And I believe I've got that right. So that's the request. And you remember that Fred Sussman, the attorney, has reviewed with you the standards for granting a variance. And the variance standards are essentially related to the existing site and the impact of the variance on adjoining properties. So what the applicant has to demonstrate is that there's something unique about this property, the physical aspects of this property that require them to exceed the maximum height limitation. You simply can't come to the Board of Appeals and ask for a variance just because you want one. You have to point to a physical condition that limits your ability to comply with the strict code, right? And as the zoning administrator or as the planning commission, we have to apply the code strictly. But an applicant can come to you and ask for relief. And I go through this because I know most of the members right now are relatively new on the Board of Appeals, and you haven't seen many variances. But the applicant can come to you and ask for relief, and they have to point to something unique about their property that suggests they can't comply with the standard. So I think what I'm doing is shaping the testimony that I think Rand has to provide you. He's going to probably talk about the size of the lot, the presence of the existing school, the conditions of the environment like steep slopes and wetland buffers and the forest buffer, and the fact that there's not much land left to build on. And as a result, a variance is requested so you can build it up a little higher and the kids can continue to go to school. That's just pretty important. Those are the essential things. The last thing is that the applicant has to say that he would experience a hardship if you couldn't get this variance. And of course, you can imagine what a hardship might be that the applicant would experience. The lot is such that physical conditions prevent you from building a low building, and as a result, there's a hardship that's felt. In this case, the hardship may be public rather than just simply private, in the sense that a school is an essential element of the community and certainly supported by the community. And while it's in today's world, we're all learning from home, at some point the kids are going to go back to school and they need a place to study and learn in. And missing that opportunity would certainly provide a hardship to the residents of Chesapeake Beach. So I just summarized quickly the 5, 6, 7 standards that the variance requires. And that, Dr. Spencer, concludes my quick summary, unless the board members have any questions.
Okay, if there are no more questions, we'll close the discussion. And the board will go into deliberation and decide both matters.
Madam Chair, this is Fred Sussman. The applicant has to make his presentation regarding the variance.
Thanks.
So I'll in my discussion on the variance, I'll simply just address the 5 points that are the points of deliberation that were presented at the beginning of the meeting, as well as kind of summarized in Chris's presentation earlier. One is addressing item 1. I believe our variance is in harmony with its surroundings. We hope to improve the public welfare in town just with the redevelopment of the school, but also with the redevelopment of the site. And we hope we are able to demonstrate that it's consistent with that town vision and the town ideals and the architecture of the town. Number 2, it's the continued use of the site of the, number 2 is about the use permitted by the zoning, and with the special exception that we were requesting earlier this evening, that is an acceptable use. Item number 3 is the special circumstances and the site limitations. And I've brought that slide again up on the screen to just reiterate the limited area of the site that's available for construction. Between the steep slope, the buffer setbacks, the wetlands, and the existing school that must be retained in operation during our construction process. Those are the special circumstances and the physical limitations of the site. The hardship, of course, is that the 35 feet, which is really intended for residential construction because this is the medium density residential zone, really doesn't address the needs of a multi-story elementary school. And the footprint that's available for our construction because of those site limitations really requires us to go to a multi-story elementary school, and particularly in this case to a 3-story elementary school to accommodate the program. The hardship, of course, is that if we can't build this building vertically, we cannot accommodate the quantity of spaces in classrooms, and therefore can't accommodate the capacity that the building requires to serve the needs of the population and the students in and around the town of Chesapeake Beach. So that is really our hardship, that we can't meet the needs. So to address item number 5, we hope you find our variance request is reasonable and of course necessary to accomplish the goals of our project. So just in summary, that's the request that we're making directly related to the 5 questions that we've been asked to answer for that.
This is the second time that I've watched this presentation. And I'm really very impressed. But that's a personal note. I need to now take it back to the board and we need to deliberate. Open it.
Madam Chair, I think that you need to see whether any of the board members or Mr. Jakubiec have any questions for the applicant, and also if there are any members of the public who would like to speak on this part of the application.
Okay, Mutu. Mr. Jakubiec, do you have any comments?
Yes, only one. I wanted to mention that the Planning Commission offered a recommendation on the variance as well, even though they weren't required to by the ordinance. They did recommend approval of the variance. They made that part of their motion when they approved when they recommended the special exception. And that's all I have to comment on.
Anyone else?
Madam Chair, Dave Ferguson here. I would just like to ask whether any of the residents in that neighborhood have expressed concern about the height.
Well, I guess I could take a stab at that. I've not heard anything, and we haven't received any comments in the mail or phone calls at the town hall, as far as I know. Certainly, Sharon could help answer that question too, but typically I would hear about it, and the property has been posted extensively, so. Sharon?
Yes. No, there's been no comment.
Good.
This is Suchita Warner with Calvert County Schools. If I may add, we made the presentation initially to the Board of Education. Goodness, it's probably been a little bit over a year ago when we went about embarking on a feasibility study. And we were looking at a variety of options for Beach Elementary School. And at the time, the 3-story option was certainly one of the items or one of the schemes that was presented. So this has certainly been out in the public, and it was covered in the local papers a long time ago. And we have heard nothing but positive comments. So I just wanted to put that out there for everybody.
Great, great. Okay.
Anyone else?
Madam Chairman, this is Jan Rutke. I have a question regarding the vision for the town that includes enhanced walkability. And I'm impressed with the fact that Rand has already offered up several ideas as to how the school property might potentially connect to what will be a future walkway and boardwalk system. I think my question might be to Chris perhaps, is that since this is important to the town, is this something, Rand, is this something that we have your commitment on doing? I mean, is it actually, it seems like it's tentative at this point. Maybe I'm wrong about that. I mean,
the sidewalk system that we're proposing is part of our design.
okay, so depending upon how you choose to eventually at some point in the future connect the school ground with walkways, boardwalks, and that sort of thing, you're committed that that will be a part of your plan.
Correct. So a number of components. One is the Safe Walks to Schools project. Our project connects sidewalks to every corner. I think Chris also highlighted in his report how we're also planning crosswalks at the major intersection of Bayside and Old Bayside to connect to the interconnected town sidewalk system. And the components that I spoke of earlier of the connection down to Fishing Creek, we really want to make that gateway so that we can then connect that at a future time.
Great. Okay, that was. I'm a member of the Walkability Committee, and that was something that was of tremendous focus and interest. So, good. Thank you.
And Jan, if I can, just to build on that point, it would be extremely difficult within the scope of the school's project and budget to lay out the specific alignment for an extension to Fishing Creek Trail at this point. And being involved 15 years ago in the first trail linkage that we built, that process is quite extensive and involves the many state agencies, and it will take a lot of time. And the town needs to know where the alignment's going to be and where we'll enter this neighborhood, if you will, before we could even ask the school to do it. But they have indicated to work with us, and when we go back to Planning Commission, we'll have a firmer idea about roughly where those connections were going to be. And we even heard from the principal tonight about the general support for the interconnection here. And that's so gratifying. And it's nice to see this long-term plan coming to fruition slowly but surely over time.
Thank you, Chris.
Madam Chair, if I may, this is Fred Sussman again. I think that we should make sure that the applicant offers for the record all the application materials and supporting documents. They've been referred to and they've been provided to the various commission members, but I think we should have on the record a request to have those application materials made a part of the record. So, Mr. Ilkovich, if you would make that proffer.
Yes, absolutely. Sharon is still with us, correct?
Yes, she is. I believe she might be muted. Let me just.
No, I'm.
Yeah.
Yes, I'll enter it into the record, the application and the supporting document.
Thank you, Sharon.
Uh-huh.
Thanks, Fred. Is there anything else before we go into our deliberation? Okay.
Madam Chair, may I, before you go to deliberations? This is Fred Sussman.
Yes.
Okay. We've dealt with a number of applications before together in, I don't know if we had any in the past year, but certainly within the past 2 years. And the way we've handled them is that the board, when it deliberates, may come to a tentative decision and makes a motion directing or requesting me as the board's attorney to prepare a resolution to reflect the board decision. I do that and it comes back to you as the board for review and final approval. So I would recommend that whatever way the board ultimately decides it wants to go on these two applications, that we follow the same process, that the motion be that the attorney be directed or requested to prepare a resolution to do X, Y, and Z. Thank you.
Can I hear the board's opinion? This is the way that we've been doing it, and I recommend that we do now, but I'd like to hear from the board because we have new members on now. Board members?
Dave Ferguson here. I agree with the process, but in the past, we've had to meet in person. I would recommend that we instead do another virtual meeting or telephone conference to discuss your resolution. And then we could each come by town hall individually and sign it.
I don't have any problem with that, but the board has to consider the resolution in a public meeting, and it can certainly be a virtual meeting as we're doing here today, or it can be a meeting done by teleconference as long as proper notice is given. So I don't have any issue with what you're suggesting. When we were doing this a year or two ago, there was no need for virtual meetings. We were actually meeting in person. So in today's environment, certainly for the foreseeable future, I think business is going to continue to be conducted the way we're doing it today.
You're coming down or not? No, go ahead and eat. Go ahead and eat.
Well, I think what we need to agree to here is the resolution, is preparation of the resolution. And we can talk later about how we follow up with what has to be done. What's your opinion on the resolution? Again, I'm in agreement with David. Well, with Fred, sorry. To have Fred, our attorney, prepare a resolution, and then we decide how we will sign it, given today's environment. Each of us went to the town hall to sign. That would be an issue. How do we handle that?
Well,
Doris,
Yes.
I could always do a DocuSign and send it to each one to sign that way.
Okay.
Which I have done in this COVID, us being home and doing meetings virtually through the council. I have done through the DocuSign for them to sign documents.
Dr. Spencer, I like that idea because it may reduce the time it takes to get this decision official, and anything we can do to give the school board clear direction on what your decision is as quickly as possible would be, I'm certainly preferred by everybody involved. So if it means expediting the opinion, the resolution, and the signing, let's see what we can do, because I know the applicants want to get in front of the planning commission soon for site plan review. And that process is another step that has to take place. Thank you.
Okay. Is there anything else before we do? You know, I'm hesitating here now. Fred, what are we looking at in terms of time?
Probably 2 weeks. Yeah, I'm perhaps a little bit sooner, but this is going to be a little bit more detailed resolution. And I do have other commitments and priorities to other clients. So I understand that there's a little bit of urgency and I'll do what I can. But, you know, if you're saying, you know, what's the timetable, I would say I would get it done within 2 weeks and sooner if possible.
Mr. Sussman, Dave Ferguson here. Did I understand you that we need to have a public meeting to approve the resolution and sign it?
Yes, not to sign it, but at least to approve it.
To approve it.
It's business of the commission, of the board.
Yeah, if we have to have a public meeting, we have to advertise it, what is it, Sharon, 3 weeks prior?
No, 2 weeks would be sufficient.
2 weeks, okay. So perhaps after our deliberations, we could, you know, go ahead and set a date for the next meeting if Mr. Sussman thinks he can, you know, have it prepared by then, and you could go ahead and advertise the meeting so that that clock is running.
Makes sense.
This is Suchita Warner. May I ask a question? I just wanted to find out in terms of the time frame, and Chris, please jump in if you would. In terms of the next Planning Commission meeting, certainly we're anxious to be able to make our next presentation, which I believe is sometime in September is the next Planning Commission meeting. And then we also have a clock that we're trying to move towards in terms of design development and with the state, you know, as far as submission and starting the design development process. So I guess my question is that the resolution, the process of the resolution, is that set in stone, or is there any way to be able to take up the motion and accept the variance and the special exception tonight? Just trying to.
The board's rules require that there be a written resolution and that it contain findings of fact and conclusions of law. You know, just because this is an administrative hearing, administrative process. So at least you will know tonight, presumably, if the board has directed me to prepare a resolution to approve the special exception and or variance, or to deny it. At least you'll know that.
And the next Planning Commission meeting is September 23rd. And there's, you know, we like to have the agenda set a couple weeks in advance. We could certainly place this on the agenda for site plan review. And obviously there's a risk there that something could conceivably happen and the resolution not be signed. But I would expect that this resolution would be signed by the 23rd of September.
Okay, thank you.
I actually should say, factually, to be factually correct, the next meeting is August 26th, but you're not going to make that the agenda, obviously. That's next week.
Right.
But the next meeting where we can actually have this on the agenda is the 23rd of September.
If the board votes to approve, then directs you, Fred, to do the resolution. Is that acceptable?
Yes, that's essentially, I thought that's what we were talking about.
Yeah, Because I think yeah, I think that's where we are. I'd like to hear from the board. You know, before I make my comments, I'd like to hear from the board. I'd like for us to really make our decision. That's what I had hoped to do tonight. And I think we need to do that. So, moving forward, special exception.
Jody Hunstar here. The reasons given seem to fit with the requirements, and I support moving forward with the special exemption.
Dan?
I agree. I think they meet the requirements, and I think it's a great looking plan. I think it makes sense in every way.
David?
I agree. We have a recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission that it be approved, and I think the stakeholders support it, and Ron has made a great presentation, so I'm in full agreement.
Jody?
Yes, in agreement.
Okay. That's special. Moving now to the variance.
Madam Chair, do you, or are we going to formally vote, or are we just discussing right now?
Yeah, we're discussing now. We're following your recommendation.
Okay, I see.
Are we, I do have a question, Doris. Is the public still with us, or are we in this meeting by ourselves, or just out of curiosity?
Yes, I can tell you there's 25 participants to the call.
Okay.
All have been unmuted unless they've muted themselves.
Okay.
Dan, was that an issue?
No, I just wasn't, I haven't done this before, so I wasn't sure at what stage we were. I guess that's what I'm saying, whether it was our meeting together to just make the decision or what.
Okay, we've gone through the, again, special exception. What about the variance?
Jody Hunstar speaking again. It seems that all conditions are satisfied. I believe it's in the interest of the board to vote this forward.
David Ferguson here. I agree. I believe it should be approved.
And this is Jan Rutke, and I concur.
Okay, with that, is Fred still with us?
Yes, I am, Madam Chair.
Based on the feelings of the board, I'm requesting that you prepare a resolution.
Madam Chair, I think you need to take a formal vote of the board, and I would suggest that you entertain a motion from a member of the board to direct the attorney to prepare a resolution that grants the requested special exception and the requested variance.
All right, we'll do the formal vote. As you indicated, The first vote would be on the special exception. Jan Rutley,
I vote yes to approve.
David Ferguson,
I vote yes, approve.
Jody Holstar,
Yes.
And that motion included specifying that Fred Sussman would write the opinion, a resolution, right? Just for the record, make it clear.
yes.
Okay.
Okay, variance. Jan Rutley,
I vote to approve.
David Ferguson,
I vote to approve.
Jody,
I vote to approve.
okay. Fred, what do we need from you now, or to give you?
Nothing, Madam Chair. I've been here, I've read all the materials, I have them, and I have my notes from tonight's hearing, so I have enough to prepare a resolution for you. Madam Chair, did you vote on either of the two motions?
No.
Okay. So I think that would conclude the business of the board on the application.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your time and your evening. Appreciate everybody's attention and care for the project.
Well, thank you. I mean, I can't, you all done a wonderful job.
Appreciate that.
Thank you all. Thank you for taking the time to hear our presentation. We're excited about the project.
It's an exciting project.
Thank you, Dr.
Okay.
Spencer. Thank you, Holly. Thank you, all the board members. Appreciate your time and effort.
You're welcome. The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.